Hello, everybody. Welcome back. This is a conversation with Dr. Rich Blundell. He is an ecologist working at the interface of art, science, nature, and culture. His research examines how transformation happens across the scales of person, place, and planet. As a cultural communicator, Rich tells a scientific story of the universe that includes art and human creativity as natural phenomena. He's out there looking to connect with artists, with creatives that want to reconnect with nature, because he believes that in order to create a new narrative for us as humans, a positive narrative that will put us in a better direction, in a direction of, I think it would be more of like more connecting with Mother Earth as Earthlings. This word was funny when he said that in the conversation. Earthlings. I felt like that was like we're aliens, you know. So he tells the story of the Earthling and what that means to be an Earthling, to show reverence, and to appreciate and show gratefulness for this miracle that we are. He works with his ideas to work with artists to help them let go of the ego and reconnect with this consciousness, you know, that this thing that we all really do have a connection to, but we somehow have lost over the years, especially this story of 13.6 billion years from the beginning of the universe to now. He traces it all back to today, and he can help you do that in this conversation, and also if you connect with him on his website and through all of his accounts, which we'll also put in the show notes. So enjoy this conversation, and thank you for stopping by. The connection that we have is just, it is what it is, and it's always like, well, now we're live, cut to live, and as if it's anything different. But
More of that. I easily forget that we've started live.
Yeah, and you've been okay. So like I said, like me looking at that video, I got a feeling for who you are, for the story that brought you into. Well, it's just such a typical story too, right? Like I related on it on so many levels. You were a young guy, you're out there, you're fishing, and you started out fishing really close to the shore, like behind the lighthouse. And eventually it was like, well, let's get into sport fishing, and you got into the bigger fishes, and you got a tuna. Was it a tuna, or what was it? What fish was it?
Bluefin tuna.
And you looked into the eyes of this tuna and you watched it die in front of you, and it glazed over. This is me just paraphrasing. Like you had in the video, it was much more eloquent and with nice music, and it just really it reminded me of there's so many levels there. So when that happened, what was that like for you? Like what changed in you when you saw that?
Well, you know, I do say that something changed in me when I saw that happen, but I'm not sure that it really changed me as much as it reminded me of something. You know, it put me back in touch with something that was in me, as opposed to change me. I do say that it changed me in the video, and it certainly did change my trajectory. But, look, it's taken me a lot of exploration and interrogation and investigation to figure out what that moment was all about. And, the scientist in me went off on this mission to understand how communication like that can happen. But what I really, and I'm still only beginning to understand, that it's not about the mechanism of communication as much as what's communicated. And that's I think that's actually a profound realization that I have since gained that isn't even in that film. And that is that what that tuna was saying, regardless of how it said it, and I'm not saying it spoke English to me. I'm saying that there was something communicated in that moment, but what it was communicating was a directive not to forget that part of me, that habitat, that activity of fishing, not just like the activity of fishing, but the act of being in close and direct contact with that world, the underwater world, the benthic world, the world of the seafloor, that I would catch little glimpses of, not just glimpses, but actual sensorial stimulus from. I don't want to get too technical, but I started off as a lobsterman catching lobster, which is really about taking, dead fish, bits of dead fish, stuffing it into bags, putting it down onto the bottom of the ocean, letting it attract everything from around the, in the area on the bottom, put it into a little cage, and then pull it back up to the surface and open it up. Like it's this box you open up on the side of the boat, and you look down there and you see all these things that have showed up. That is what I'm talking about. That that process of or that experience of having your hands all wet and slippery, and the smells and the sensations of like the hard shells of animals, and the way that they try to pinch you and try to escape and get back, and all that stuff that would happen when the trap would come up to the surface. What the tuna was saying was, don't forget that. Like, don't forget the experiences the wonder that you felt in those moments. So I guess this is just a long way of saying that this is how it changed me. It reminded me not to forfeit the child's experience of the world. And so that's my answer.
Yeah, like I feel like that when I'm in a good meditative state, and I was listening to this one good yogi explaining it. I keep on forgetting his name. Anyway, it was fantastic though. He has like this way of talking, and then there's these moments when he talks about this state of like what is it out there that says that I'm not already enlightened? Like there's this type of searching that you do in your meditation, and it actually defeats the purpose of meditating. Like some of these yogis, they say that because that act of meditation is actually reinforcing this dualism, this separation.
I get it.
Right. And so you said that when that fish, it was just reminding you of actually your true existence, your true consciousness is and for some, and because of these layers, it feels like these layers of that we in our society, like how far away we actually are from this natural existence. It's almost like you have to consciously put yourself. You did this just in that video I saw, like in that 7-minute video, how you after this moment, this type of enlightenment in that sense, and I would call it that, but we can call it whatever you want. Just this where you felt in touch with some deeper energy, whatever it is, and you followed that, and you kept it alive. Like you kept kind of trying to make sure that you didn't lose that. Is just how I see it. Like you correct me, please, but it seemed like you went after that on this voyage. How young you were younger, right? I mean, you were.
Yeah, that was. I always forget how old I was.
But some of the videos you were putting there were like 92 and stuff. So it had the little.
That was a previous. Well, that was the video of the tuna is fairly recent. I think it's like 2015, 16. I don't even see. I'm terrible with dates, but and then some of the footage that's in that video is from the actual search. That was. Yeah. So the Tuna-incident happened back in the mid 80s.
Right.
And then that put me on that trajectory of searching and learning, in a way that I had never done as a student. a whole different kind of learning, a whole different kind of curiosity and motivation to learn. But yeah, so the yeah, so some of those clips are from time in Africa, East Africa, and all over the world, frankly. Um, but in that moment, it didn't feel like enlightenment. I don't know if I would call it that. I don't really kind of know what that means.
Yeah,
but
it's one of these terms. I'm sorry. I don't mean to.
yeah, it's all right. But I mean, I certainly don't claim that. But the point is that in the moment, I felt a lot of things, mostly confusion and an impending sense of dread that I had done something that was, that I desacralized something that was sacred. And that's, and the thing was the contrast of feelings. In other words, the feeling on the boat was one of celebration, of excitement, of, we caught this fish. It was going to give us all some money, and everybody's patting me on the back, like, because, I would talk about how I know how to do this because I'm so in touch with this thing, this animal and whatever. But the point was that I felt like I had betrayed something that I loved. I didn't, and that didn't feel like enlightenment, It felt like something else, dread, regret. Anyway, but then that I'm glad it happened because it put me back on track, put me back in touch with what really matters, which is the kind of beauty that we suddenly find ourselves in when we choose to see it. Yeah, sorry, man. I don't mean to get off on tangents, and we were only like a few minutes into this call, and we're like,
I know. I kind of. That's actually like my. I tend to do that, but I just feel like that's where it's at, right? Like your story is you. So how old were you in mid 80s?
I don't know. Probably
like 25-ish.
Something like that. No, this was right after high school.
Oh, okay.
So,
okay.
Again, I mean, I was actually late in graduating from high school, so they kept me back because I had, they called me in at the end of the school year saying, "Hey, it says here that you've missed, about 80% of the, required days to be in class, so we're gonna have to keep you back."
That's something we have in common, actually.
What's that?
That's something we have in common, actually.
Yeah.
I did it. I was chasing girls, though. I mean, maybe that was my problem, but
yeah, I did a fair amount of that too. So yeah, it was still a formative time. In fact, I think it caught me right at the end of it. If it hadn't caught me then, maybe it never would have. Mm-hmm. That's what it felt like. It was like this thing that was receding away, and this was the last opportunity to stay in touch with it. And like you said, yeah, since that moment, I haven't looked back. Like, I have completely committed to whatever this mysterious thing is. It has, without any doubt, it has shaped and guided and been my every waking moment since then, which I think is a little strange and risky.
Well, yeah, I mean, I guess it's risky for sure, right? Because there's not really like this whole thing about making money, and everyone has this pressure to make money and to make something, a career out of what you love. And if nature is what you love, I mean, I grew up with a father that he was fish and game warden in California.
Oh wow.
And and as I was watching that, like, I instantly was like, okay, I got to share this with you, because that's something that, like, as a boy growing up with most fish and game wardens, I mean, you don't want to put them all there's not many of them in California, so I guess the majority of them were hunters, and Mark wasn't that kind of guy. Like, he isn't that kind of guy. He respected it and he controlled them, but he wasn't part of that. Like, he didn't become a fish and game warden because he was a hunter and that was just like the natural progression. He became a fish and game warden because he didn't like humans and he liked animals, and he wanted to help the animals,
to protect them.
Protect them. And he, there's so many stories. Like, I mean, there's this, I can go in any range of it. Just as a child, as a young boy, having this basically this glorified camping, like he said, it was like he get paid to go camping. That was his, I mean, there was a lot of dark sides to that job living in Los Angeles and stuff like that. But he was always on the animals side, and he was always there to help out the animals because nobody helps them out. And there's so many. It's a real complex. That's the thing about all of these topics. It becomes complex very fast. He made for him, that was his way of being able to stay in touch with with nature and still bring money home for the family. Right. I mean, it wasn't, it's a very modest pay. It's not like, but we never went hungry. We always had a nice house, and we were able to just, have a nice upper middle class life. What did you do? That's actually what I wanted to ask you. Like, you started this path on this path at a young enough age to where you became a doctor. But where did you go after that? Like, what was your next step after you had this moment?
Dude, it's going to be impossible for me to retrace my steps. Yeah. I mean, there's just so much to unpack there. But basically, after the tuna incident, I felt like I was sort of woken up to take this sort of magic that's in the world, to take it seriously. And the most serious way that I could think of to do that was through science. I think science is an earnest, I'm talking mostly about like the natural sciences, ecology, biology, geology, studies of the natural world, as opposed to like, high-tech pharmaceutical science. I'm talking about not the natural sciences. I figured that was the best way to kind of do what your dad did, which was to figure out a way to be outside, be in contact with this thing that I loved. That was really it. That was the simple motivation, as an adolescent or as a young adult, was to just find those opportunities where I could be in nature. And that meant, going to East Africa to take courses and to teach about the geology of East Africa. It meant going out to sea to be a scientist aboard a schooner that was sailing all over the Atlantic. It meant, teaching in Central America. So but that's where it went. And it was, at no point was I ever really making a living, and I think it's really important to acknowledge how the efforts of those who came before us, like in my case, my parents, my family and their parents, and just humanity in general, that, we have created the conditions by which individuals can pursue dreams, pursue passions, pursue the things that they love, not just for their own self-interest, but for the interests of all. But at the same time, there are so many human beings on this planet that don't have that privilege. And I just want to make sure that I acknowledge that, that whatever it was because I was born at a particular time in a particular culture with a particular trajectory, in a particular region, in a particular nation, all this stuff that aligned so that, so that this could unfold. And I don't want to squander all that. I don't want to squander what the world has taught me through that privilege, and I want to, in fact, now turn that privilege around and see if we can't create the conditions where more people can experience that kind of relationship with the world. I know this is getting, this is not getting political, but it is getting realistic. I want to be realistic to say that, my life's work, is a privilege to do. And I don't want to just use the privilege. I want to actually see if we can't convert that into more widespread privilege, more widespread opportunity and health and prosperity. I know that all sounds very idealistic, and it is idealistic, but it's not naive.
Yeah,
Anyway, the point, all I'm saying there is that, to answer your question, which was, where did it take me? It took me around the world, and it took me, I hooked on to this science as my sort of, that was the vehicle by which I could do that. And so, and I had jobs and I made a little bit of money here and there, but it was never really, but it didn't take it. I wasn't in it for the money. I was in it for the experience and for the wisdom that was always right there. The wisdom that was always right there, in the hopes that one day that I would be able to then turn around and say, this is what it taught me. And that's kind of where I am today.
Yeah. So you're able to use that, your relationship with the nature that you've built up, and then also your willingness to understand you had to learn, like you said, about the people that came before you. When you first said that, I thought about you maybe going to go in the direction of also the scientific minds that, right?
Oh, that too,
yeah. Right? Like so you're able to take all of this knowledge and then just kind of be like, okay, go out there to Africa and see what previous geologists have done, and then teach that also. So and I had a geologist actually here locally here in Germany on the podcast when we first got started, like last year, and she was I loved her perspective because she was just so like like she just what'd she say? Grounded. Yeah, exactly. Like, no, but she basically just threw it in my face, like, you just count your lucky stars every day that a huge volcano doesn't erupt. It's ready to go any moment, and she just kind of threw that perspective in my face. But now in the phase that you're in now you're able to turn this around, to take this great chance that you have to been able to focus your life and to been able to be so how you put it, like to be really it's just, I feel that way too, like just to be able to sit here and I kind of get my wife calls it this philosopher's stone, like I can sit here and talk, ask these big questions. It's like that means all of the main things have to be taken care of, right? I have a roof over my head. I'm not hungry. Like I was listening to this podcast the other day. This woman from North Korea, right? She didn't even know. She doesn't even know what Coca-Cola tasted like. Like there's just like all she knew was hunger, and if the next meal. So everything after that is just luxury for a huge population of our planet. And that's nice to hear that from you, that you also realize that and say, this is a privilege that I'm able to share and try and churn around and create what I guess, how do you say it? The things that you've gotten out of it, to try and use that and help other people to experience the same thing that you were able to experience.
It's called gratitude.
Yeah.
And it's just a question of just doing something with it, doing something with all of the opportunities that my accidental circumstances has, provided to just to try and improve the human condition in some tiny way, and that's all. So I don't know. I guess we don't need to stay so
esoteric.
Well, and also just so altruistic, it's like,
yeah.
But the point of all of this really is not to just have these hedonistic experiences. It's really about, how can we shape this planet up? How can we shape up and live up to our potential?
So how can we do that? What's your like, where are you at on that? Where is the rubber meet the road with you right now?
Well, in a lot of places, gratitude is it. I think, well, how do we how do we take what gratitude is out there and turn it around, turn that energy back around into cultivating more gratitude, more widespread gratitude, like that. I know that all sounds very ethereal, like that's not very practical. I do have, I do think I know how to do that. It isn't easy. It's a question of changing our habits of thought. It's a question of changing the fundamental patterns of human thought, which are narrative structures. So I think understanding how narrative works in the human cognitive space is really important. I think crafting new narratives that can displace old narratives, in ways that sort of defuse the dynamite that we've rigged the world with. So I guess, and if we want to talk about specifics, how I intend to do that, it involves art. I think art is an undervalued asset right now, and I'm trying to develop not a new art form, but actually a new kind of beauty that art can express. But also it has to do with understanding our predicament. It has to do with understanding the scientific realities of who we are and where we find ourselves. We've totally forgotten what our actual family history is. We think we've just totally forgotten, or we haven't even forgotten it. We haven't known it. We haven't taught our future generations what their story is. And so it makes perfect sense that we identify with the small things but we've failed to teach how to identify with the big things, the earth scale things and the cosmic scale things.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. Yeah. Go ahead.
Well, I was just saying that I think that's a key component to this is remembering and re-inhabiting our big story, big history, which is what my graduate study was in.
It's interesting. It's hard too because it becomes so hard to fathom. Like every time I listen to someone talk about, I listened to probably I got into it about 6 or 7 months ago. I was listening to this one guy talking about the world and how we're ruining it like on such a scale so fast. And there's just multiple points of conflict that we're just, you can look anywhere. It's so obvious, really. If you just open your eyes to see the disconnect, if you just go down to your local supermarket in wintertime and you look at the produce section, you just know that something's that can't be good. Like it just, like the energy that we're dumping to do that, but I still go down there and I still grab the bananas, so it's like there's such a huge disconnect from the actual problem. And then as soon as like you and I get on this conversation, we talk about it, and someone listening in, they have that same conflict, right? They have that same disconnect with the ramifications of our actions every day. But our society is also constructed this way. So now and then it gets political, right? God, don't even go there. Like politics are something that God, it's a science in itself, and yeah, but I guess what I wanted to say is this: as a father with 3 children, like it feels like sometimes, some days, you're just trying to keep your head above the water, right? So yeah, even in that sense, it's like I look outside. Today was trash day, and we have plastic bags in Germany. We like yellow bags. We put them out there, and the plastic truck comes along and picks them all up. And I always look at everybody else's, and like our family of 5, I'm like I feel bad just because our bags are like 3. We have like 3 or 4 more bags than everybody else, So like, what's your footprint? That's something like that. Can I do something every single day that's small? Maybe just a small little change that scales up to a bigger change. Do I look at the seafood that I eat? I mean, where do you start?
Dude, you've answered your own question there. You've solved the problem that you laid out, which is a consciousness to one's impact and what one consumes. That's it. Like that's really all you have to do, and the rest will start to take care of itself. Don't beat yourself up because we inherited these systems, and we want to change them. We want to make them better, but we still have to operate from within the systems that we've inherited. And so, you could go through life and never seek to change it or to improve things. But that doesn't sound like that's not your trajectory. And I don't think it's my trajectory. I think we're trying to operate within the systems we've inherited to incrementally change them. And there's some really good news that's kind of hidden, which is that, there's a lot of good news actually having to do with the resilience and the sort of creativity of nature. I think we completely underestimate nature's capacity to heal and grow. And so those are kind of in there. Nature has an ace up her sleeve in that sense, but also the way to back away from the cliff isn't about taking the same steps back. In other words, it's not going to be an incremental undoing of what we've done. We've got technologies and ideas and things that are emerging that we never saw coming that operate at the same accelerated level, at the same accelerated pace as So I guess what I'm saying is, don't assume that the problems are going to be solved by just undoing what we've done. We have to tap into some emergent force, and it's my contention, my proposal is that there's something beautiful in there that's attractive. This isn't about, we're not going to compromise our way out of this.
Right.
We're not going to make sacrifices we're actually going to feel more joy. We're going to feel I hope, and I think, and I'm trying to participate in our collective intelligence that will create a beautiful way out of this. I think that's happening. And I don't want to undersell that,
I think my fear is when you say that is like, well, cool, then I guess I can just rest on my laurels then, like that. Maybe that's why it's almost like good to kind of keep it hidden somehow. Cause it's like, well, if everybody knew that it's going to be fun to change the world in an easy way, then just wait for that to happen. And then I'm good to go. It's just like, I kind of feel like there needs to be some type of work in there somewhere. I have to.
Oh, there is work, but I just don't think it's the work that we, as we currently know it.
Yeah. It's like a paradigm shift in a sense.
And the new paradigm is, look, when you look back at the old paradigms that have been here, they look insane. They look, self-destructive and just, they create all kinds of bullshit. But the next paradigm isn't even really visible. You can't even really see it. You just have to live your way into it. And the next thing you know, you're in it. And then the one that you just came from, it looks absurd. So, I think it's okay for some of us to rest on our laurels, because there are others that aren't. There's a lot of really creative, dedicated, thoughtful people in the world, and they're doing stuff. So I don't know. I'm not going to give up on us yet. We've made some really bad mistakes, but who hasn't? It's like there's fractals everywhere here. Like if you look at each of our life trajectories, we did things when we were adolescents and when we were teenagers that we were just stupid. But we don't hate ourselves for that. We just sort of cultivate and nurture ourselves into something better.
What do you think of someone like Elon Musk?
I don't know Elon Musk.
Yeah.
I think I think he's great. I think his creativity should be, and his sort of his energy and his enthusiasm for the future and all that stuff, I think is commendable. I think there are some flaws in the basic assumptions about how we're going to get off of this planet, or even that getting off of this planet is really what we want or should be doing. I don't understand.
Yeah.
What are we going to go to terraform some other planet and what, bring all these bad habits of, parasitic and exploitative thinking with us onto another planet? I don't see the logic in that.
Yeah.
So I think this idea that we're going to use physical craft to bring us to other planets and that somehow is the salvational future is just, I don't know, just doesn't have any logic behind it. I think more imaginatively about how we're going to prosper in the future. It ain't going to be this on another planet. We've already got this planet. What do we need? Like it doesn't make any sense. We've got this incredibly beautiful, rich, complex living thing, and we're going to go what? Go enjoy the hellscape of Mars? Like it's just, I don't know. There's a disconnect there, I think.
There's something there. I think it's more like, I think he's just a numbers guy or something. And I think he just is like, well, probability of human life on a scale of 1 billion years, better probability 2 planets. And that's it. And then it just like objective. It's like a machine that's like, that's his objective. Because we have better chances, human civilization surviving in the eons if one planet gets exploded by a volcano.
But that's like the mentality from like the 1950s, saying, "Hey, we need to put copper transmission lines all around the planet so that we'll be able to communicate in the future." It's like, no, the copper wire isn't the way to do it. We do it wirelessly. It's like, I just think there's an analogy there that something's missing from that. Yeah. And that's okay, because we still need those numbers guys. We still need those visionaries to go out there and show us the way and show us the mistakes.
Yeah, I mean, there's this whole battery thing. So I don't know enough about it, but I've always just, and I, like, honestly, my stomach tells me buying a Tesla, setting up my house with solar, charging my Tesla is like I guess the marketing, the deep down thing that I'm really doing is I'm just buying a new iPhone. Like, it's just fun. Like the connection.
Well, that can be fun and, an effective way out of the unrenewable energy sources.
That might actually be that actually might be exactly what you mean. So in a sense, it's like, well, because it's fun for me and I can do this and I can afford it because of the situation that I'm in, lucky me. So then I buy myself a cool car. I buy myself solar. It's not really efficient. Like, if I look on the piece of paper, like, there's no way that that's going to be cheaper than just me buying a cheap beater car that gets, terrible gas mileage. That's cheaper still for me on paper. But the fun of it and the idea of it, and then if I can afford it, and then you have like an iPad, and on the iPad it says you're 80%, you're running your entire house on solar energy and your car. But then I hear these things about like the metals and stuff that are in the batteries. There's a whole problem there, right? There's a whole water problem there that I don't really know enough about, but I hear that there's a dark side to that too, right? That batteries on that scale can also,
but you care. You care, right?
Right.
So
yeah.
This isn't a technical problem. It's a care it's not a technical solution. It's a care solution. You care about that, and that will ripple up, into markets and stuff, the things that make these things happen. So yeah, I hear what you're saying. And now you've started to enter into the realm that I think matters the most, which is how we think and how we perceive ourselves and how we perceive ourselves as relating to the world. I think embedded within what you're saying is a bigger solution that actually solves a whole constellation of problems. In other words, I think that the fact that you care about that is also a solution to xenophobia. It's also a solution to economic disparity. It's also a solution to, any kind of social problem because it's about care. It's about it's about how you think, man, and how you position yourself in the world. Again, this is going to get ethereal and esoteric or whatever, but I think it's time to seriously think about these things. That the way people's tastes, I don't know how else to say it actually, other than just people's like perceptions matter. They matter in a way that I don't think economists have fully appreciated. And so that's an area to work in, I think. And this is why I'm turning to artists. This is why I'm sort of immersing myself in the art world now, because that's the currency that they transact in, through emotional impact and transformations of thinking. So I don't mean to get off track. I just think, within your sort of psychic landscape are solutions and responses to what's wrong with the world that I think, we're ready to start cultivating more. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, I see it sometimes in these younger kids too. Like they come out with these amazing problem solving tools for, I guess they're in the oceans, all the plastic. I saw some guy, they came up with some contraption that just goes out there and just picks up all the garbage, and then his other student, they're all communicating online. They're able to meet on forums and problem solve on engineering platforms and which something that was never available before. And so you have like these younger kids coming out doing their graduate studies on, and they're all focused on, let's save this planet. Let's do this, So that seems reassuring. My kids are, my oldest is 9 years old. So it'll be interesting to see, like, as he gets older, when it starts to become more of an academic thing as opposed to just, learning the basics right now, what direction you go into. And obviously your parents, we shape that. We can show him different. We can just show him as much as possible and see where he gravitates to. But I guess this disconnect is something that I think a lot of parents don't realize, that because they're disconnected themselves, that they don't take the time to go out into the nature with their family, with their children, and actually just, like in that video, I saw the joy in your face when you just pulled a little turtle out of the water and you just say, hey buddy, and that's reminding me of my dad. He used to do that with me. He would take me out and be like, look at that, and I remember like shooting my first lizard with my BB gun. And I felt so sad, like when you said that about the fish. I think the fish would be a whole nother thing, but because that's like a big animal, But I felt like I never did that again. Like that was the one little guy I shot, and I knew from that moment on, like I'm not going to be that guy unless it was unless I knew, because the lizard, I'm not going to eat it. I can't do anything. I just murdered it for no reason, right? And you just sat there all dead, like sprawled out. Like, thanks, man, appreciate that. Just a BB to the head. For what? Because you're like 9 years old and you wanted to shoot a BB, like he kind of gave me that, like, I think that was his look, or he was just, foobarred, right?
But I felt what you felt in that moment of the tuna, because I ended that thing's life, and if I hadn't done that, it would still be alive. And so, I removed that from the world and through that small little action. And so I sympathize with you on that.
Yeah. I mean, and it's, I guess just having that connection, or showing that it's possible to have that connection with nature, and then reinforcing that. I do it with myself, but then obviously my kids will get that too. Like going out, even if it's cold outside, oh my God, it's cold outside. It's like put a jacket on and get outside. And every time I do that in the deep depths of winter, I come back inside. I'm like, oh man, I was way overdue, actually. It's like it's so obvious when you do it, but just taking that step and and fighting against this urge to stay in the cave or something. I don't know what that is. There's something deep inside us, or at least inside me. Like I learned that in the pandemic too. Like my wife's she kind of goes out there and she wants to be out and be social. And I was like, I'm good. I can stay in this cave all day long. I realized like it's a bad thing. Like I have no problem just kind of hiding out in this little living room and keeping the windows closed and everything, and I don't know what that is, why that's I tell her that it's because like my ancestors, that's why I'm still here, because all the other ones were getting eaten by lions outside, and my ancestors, they stood in the cave and they let those other crazy folk go out there and fight the battle. I don't know.
It's true, but there are gifts out there for those who, and it doesn't mean you have to cross an ocean or climb a mountain or subject yourself to any kind of necessarily hardship or adventure. It's really about, we can do this today from the comfort of, the porch and just spend some contemplative time appreciating the way the wind moves through the trees, or the way the light reflects off of things, or the song of a single bird. So there are ways to tap into the intelligence and the power of nature without having to, put yourself in harm's way. This is one of the privileges that I was talking about. Like, we have that. We've been a smart enough species to figure out that we can do this in a way that's comfortable, I think that's important. I think people get turned off by nature because of its harshness and the way it creates discomfort and risk. Well, we don't need to focus on those things. We can just focus on the simple beauty of it. A house plant could. You can establish a rapport with a houseplant in a way that opens up a new relationship. And if you do a little research online about what photosynthesis is and how it works, suddenly you look at the plant differently. You see it in communion with a freaking thermonuclear explosion. That's, that's right. 8 light minutes that way. And it's in there. There's this thing going on between the plant and the sun and the star out there. And there's this stuff going on inside it, and some of those molecules that are the byproduct of that are now getting into me and that plant. Oh, me and this plant have the point is, it doesn't have to be dangerous.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be that you don't have to climb Kilimanjaro. That's probably a great gift too, if you're going to make it there. I can imagine being at the top, but the gift doesn't have to be this grandiose, huge thing. It can also be the simplicity of actually just understanding the photosynthesis that's happening in your garden, and taking that fresh harvested tomato, picking it and putting it on I guess I was going to say burger. I guess that's not so. I hope it.
Well, how much joy can you get out of the burger? If you're going to eat one, you might as well extract as much joy. And
I'm definitely into burgers. I'm a big fan of burgers.
Don't blame you there.
Yeah, but it's true.
But the way we create burgers could be better. Like the way that we do what we do. Like, I still fish. I still eat fish. I just do it in a way where I try to be reverent about what I'm doing, as opposed to simply commodifying it into, which is what is what the tuna was saying. Don't forfeit this thing that you feel for the natural world and turn it into a commodity through which to make a living, because that is devoid of meaning. That's devoid of joy. Feel the joy that's inherent in the thing, in the what's present. And I'm not I'm not an activist in any explicit way like that, but I do think that we cultivating a sense of joy, even if you have to fake it till you make it, can go a long way toward, like, we've gotten margins of comfort, margins of prosperity that we can use, to develop this sense of joy, and then that joy will ripple through the perennial problems in a way that starts to heal.
You got two. There's two things that are really good there. You got the fake it to the make it thing. I want to go back to that, but the other thing was when you're saying about this idea of reverence. That's what also I remember from my childhood when we'd go camping. We'd make a fire. We went up. I remember I went up one time, drove up to the top of the Angeles Hills. It was awesome. You could see down to Catalina Island. You could actually see the coastline of in Los Angeles, and getting up there, you don't think of Los Angeles having this huge mountain range. Like nobody really thinks of it like that, but it's there. Mount Baldy, there's snow and all the way deep until almost into the summertime up there, and I remember going up there. We took some fire roads because Dad had the keys, so we just took up. It took us like 5 or 6 hours to get up to somewhere where no one really could go, and we made a campsite there. And when we left it like we were never there. That was like the rule. It was like, this is a beautiful place. This is a gift. And when you build your camp away, you bury your coals. You found that even the place that you found the place to make the fire was a place that wasn't going to harm anything. It was going to be like, we're going to make this little fire here. It's going to be small. We're not going to make a huge bonfire and do Dances with Wolves, dance around, even though that was a great movie. But and when we leave, there's no trace of it. It's like the Indian rule, like the Native American rule. Like we our path, like we leave no trace behind. And if we need to take something, then we say thank you. Like if we need to take a bear or we need to take food and we need to kill something to feed ourselves, then it was always with reverence, right? They always said thank you for giving me your life, this fish or this bear or whatever food that you're taking, whatever animal that you had to kill in that moment to feed your family. You did it because of that reason, that necessity, like you said, not because of a commodity or because you wanted to be commercial about it. It was about your natural relationship with nature, right? With your environment.
Yeah. Can I not push back a little bit, but can I extend to you can I extend to you a glimpse of a different paradigm on this subject? And that is that Native Americans didn't do those things necessarily out of respect for nature. They did it because they knew they didn't see the distinction between them and nature.
Right.
See, okay. I mean, it came from a presumption, not even an unacknowledged presumption that the world and they are continuous, and so to do something recklessly is really just self-recklessly, So my point is this leave no trace idea. First of all, it's impossible to leave no trace. And I think to obsess, I used to work with Knowles, National Outdoor Leadership School, and they're heavy into this leave no trace thing, which I'm not gonna bash, but I'm gonna say it's ridiculously small minded to think that you're not going to leave a trace, and to feel and to allow yourself or to create the conditions where you feel guilty or that you've done something wrong by leaving a trace is schizophrenic, because it all it does is reveal that you really do think that you're not that thing, because you're going to leave a trace. The question is, what kind of trace? Is it a trace that cultivates continued creativity and that participates in the place, or is it one that is going to destroy it? I understand that their motivation is to keep these places pristine, but I just think it reveals that they have and lodged within their thinking that they don't have a right to use resources or to have an impact in the world or to leave a trace. So I guess I just think it's just immature thinking to think that we're not going to leave a trace. Look, I did a video on, I forget when it was, but basically the idea was that it's actually righteous for an Earthling to take the life of the Earth for granted. You see what I mean? It's like, I think this is more what the Native American impulse was about. It was about feeling one with the world. Comes packaged with it a set of not even obligations, but just a set of what's right, that we don't have to create a rule for, because we are it. And I think if we can recover some modern version of that, it's going to be better than just feeling guilty that we left a trace. You see what I mean? And so Does that make any sense?
I get
Does
what
that
you're
sound
saying.
like a rant?
Yeah, no, because you're right. The I get that, because it's naive to think that and if I if I leave, if I say, okay, here, I didn't leave a trace, so then it's like kind of me just saying, well, it's just basically confirming that I'm disconnected, right?
Yeah. You are entitled to leave a trace because you are an Earthling. Now, most of us have forgotten that reality. We don't live as if that's true.
I
And
know even the word earthling. When you say the word earthling, I'm thinking of something like, I think of like an alien or something.
Well, yeah, exactly. It's like we only can consider, we'll take me to your leader when we say Earthlings. But to be and this is part of another thing that I teach, which is I call it Earthling theory. I teach it as a theory of art, but it's actually a theory of humanity. And what it's saying is that if you look at the history of humanity, right, and you follow it back, and by the way, where's the arbitrary division between what's human and what's not? It's like, were the Neanderthals human? Were the Australopithecines human? Were the early hominids that went extinct, were they human? It's just this ridiculous arbitrary thing that's projected onto this continuum as if there's some split between human and non-human. Like there really isn't. It's all on a continuum. This is called ontological continuity. But the point is that if you look at the history of our species and you trace it back, millions of years, and then you pick a point like 7 million years ago when when a species called Sahelanthropus chadensis, which was living somewhere in West Africa, something happened where part of that community of primates went off and did one thing, and another clade of them went and did another. And that separation evolved into the separation or the difference between us and like modern chimps. So for example, what I'm really saying is that the last universal common ancestor of modern humans and chimps was this species that we call Sahelanthropus chadensis. So one lineage went on to become modern chimps, and one lineage went on to become us. So if you look at the difference between these two lineages, what you see is that the lineage that went on to become the chimps never really left. So they actually very much lived the same way that the earlier ancestor did. But if you look at our species, or what would become our species, so that first band of Sahelanthropus that left the trees, crossed every habitat on this planet. So they came down from the trees, they crossed the forest, the outskirts of the forest. Then generation after generation, they crossed grasslands. And then they skirted a river. And so generation after generation lived alongside this river. And then they went and crossed, into the mountain ranges. And so they lived in the mountains. And then they came down the other side, and there was this vast plain. They lived there for generations. Then they crossed the oceans and the bays. The point is that lineage of humans over that 7 million year time since that split has crossed every habitat that this planet has, that's habitable. Now, each one of those habitats endowed our species with its intelligence. They've learned how to survive by interacting with that environment, and in the process, they gained the intelligence of that habitat. Now, eventually, that species would evolve into into Neanderthals and other early human species. But by the time they got to what is now Western Europe, you suddenly see modern humans, and there's this great flourish of art, creativity, cave art, portable art, and there's evidence of music and language and all this stuff. There's this explosion of creativity. And so I guess the only reason I'm saying this is if you look at the difference between modern chimps and us, humans, we have endowed, imprinted within us, the intelligence of every habitat on this planet. That makes us Earthlings. This is what I mean by Earthlings. So to have that within us, and have that, and have the capacity to express it through art and language and song and all the things that we do, is the endowment of the earth. So who's thinking about that today? I work with a lot of artists, and many of them feel a deep connection to nature and a deep sensitivity and a deep gratitude, but they don't have that story to make what they feel intuitively real. It's just an intuition. Whereas what science is showing us is that actually, no, your creative impulse and your impulse to feel connected to the world is embedded within you over the scales of geologic time. And it's a gift. That's what it means to be an Earthling. It's not some science fiction nerdy category. It's actually, we embed everything about this earth. And I don't think Elon Musk knows that. I don't think he operates under the assumption that every one of his ancestors made the right decisions, because if any one of them had not made the right decision at any step in the path, then he would not be here, to generate all his wealth and all his ideas and everything that he does. But if he knew that, then he wouldn't be so keen to just, abandon this planet. That's like, you don't just abandon your parents. You love for them. You love them. You take care of them the best you can, and you go on. You go on with everything that they've taught you. And the Earth's no different. I'm sorry, I'm going on and on again.
No, that was great, man. I followed that whole thing. I loved it. And just hearing that go from the 7 million to now, I need to hear that more often. It's like, that's a clip for me right out of this podcast that I'm going to definitely make, because that's something that people need to hear. People need to sit there and just close their eyes and listen to what you just said about this imprinted, embedded intelligence that every human being has that's alive this day.
And you can feel it.
Right.
You can. The relationship with the plant that I was talking about earlier, that stupid little thing where you look at a plant and think about it, that's where that intelligence resides. It's in that relationship between you and that plant too. And so it's available to us as a feeling, not just knowledge.
Yeah. The feeling of it.
Yeah. And I think, knowing that, really living as if that's true, because damn it, it is. It's scientifically true. What I'm saying will have impacts. It will change the world. Because it comes coupled to a sense of gratitude. It comes coupled to a sense of empathy and shared fate. And the other big one is contentedness. There's a feeling of contentedness in there that is going to be one of those hidden solutions that I was talking about. That if we can cultivate that sense of contentedness, so many of the things that we do that cause injury to the world they don't become sacrifices, they become irrelevant. Suddenly you want to jettison those things that we do that cause injury to the world.
I feel like that sometimes too. This morning even I stood home with my little one because she's a little sick, and so I took the time to clean around the house. The wife's at work. I'm like, oh well, I can do my duties here. So when she comes home from work and I come in to do the podcast with you, she can show up to a nice clean house. And so it's just, obviously you can imagine the sprawl of having like 3 children and then, but it's also like the sprawl of this not being content, right? In a sense, it's like kind of like the Amazon packages, right? And the project that was over there, and the project that started over there, and the things that aren't finished. And then I get this overwhelming feeling every time I do that it's like, just stop, just do less. And it always feels good when I'm there, because then I'm like, okay, now I'm where I need to be. Just like, you don't do the next thing. Don't do the next, like, just reduce it down. And every time that it just cut out all this extra bullshit that somehow gets in there, because it's like a feeling that you're filling some hole that's never going to be, some void that's never going to be filled, some external thing, some societal, capitalistic, that's how I reach my happiness, by consuming this whole thing. It's just like, just turn that off. It's not what makes you happy. It never will be. And it's this chasing that is just so naive. But it's almost like I know this, and in the moment I know it, but it still comes up, right? It's almost like I guess it's almost like a It happens because I have to plug back in. Like I have to go back to work, and I have to, like, at least I don't have to. I don't have to, but like the situation that I was thrown into in my life, you know, at some point, some things that maybe you can say that it's almost like determinism. Like my parents came before me, my wife's parents we found each other. This is where we're at. So you're dealing with the set circumstances, and these things are surrounding us. And so it's like when I plug into that, maybe this isn't really the most gratifying thing I'm doing right now. So then I get back home and I'm like, well, then I guess, you know, the Instagram and the Amazon's going to fire right up, and I'm going to get that dopamine hit, and I'm feeling good again, because the thing that I'm doing every day isn't plugging into this nature that I really should be plugging into, you know?
Look, man, I don't mean to create a situation where, you know, you're feeling like more anxiety about not.
I'm just being.
Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it's all good.
That's.
No, I guess I'm just trying to be more. I'm just trying to. I'm opening up about, like, just how I felt this morning, because there was that thing, like you said, like that this being content. It's easy to say it, that you're content, or that I'm grateful. And you can fake it till you make it, but at some point, like, it's got to be real. It's got to be through and through in you. And the next time that this new thing comes, I need to be like, stop. No, this isn't. No, I'm done. Like, I'm good.
Right, but you don't need to be so sort of heavy-handed about it. One of the things that I teach is these two concepts that are coupled together. And they're called narrative awareness and disruption. So there's narrative awareness and narrative disruption. It's incredibly empowering to become aware of the narratives that have crept into one's sort of ways of thinking. Yeah. And I'm not making a claim about one narrative being better than another or anything like that. I'm just asking us to be aware of the narratives that, you know, that we've inherited. And because once we do that, now suddenly we're empowered to be more discerning about which narratives we want to care about. You know, do I really, you know, like you're saying, you're kind of doing the process organically. You're saying, is this really what makes me happy? Is this really what matters? And you know instinctively what really matters, you know, family and beauty and comfort and, you know, calm, and just being able to take a moment to enjoy being. So narrative awareness is a great way. And we dive deep into it. In other words, we actually look like down at the fine grain level of narrative and what it is, like where it came from. We can actually see when narrative, the capacity to tell a story, shows up in the fossil record. You know, it shows up at, the archaeological record, the anthropological record. We can see where it shows up in stone tools and in art. And so we can trace back to those moments where narrative was this new thing, and everybody was sort of like experimenting with, and the thing about narrative is it's not purely, but it's a cognitive thing. It's a cognitive architecture that gives durability to experience. So without it, we can't learn. Without it, we can't form knowledge, really, without some form of narrative.
That's an interesting way of saying it. A durability to learning. It's a great tool because it gives you, that thing is going to create this effect, you know, in the environment. You're kind of telling a story that thing has this. It's a sequential unfolding of consequences is a story, which is a narrative structure. And we got good at that, you know, better than any other animal that does some rudimentary form of storytelling. Squirrels cache nuts, you know, which means they're kind of telling a story about nuts and storage, and I'm going to eat these later, and they know exactly where they left those nuts too, right? I mean, that's not a joke. They're like that. That's like but we have this contextual. This narrative, it gave us the edge in nature, right? Because we're able to pass over a few generation to generation this knowledge.
Yep. And tell stories and keep ourselves sort of entertained, and you know, it just has all these sort of beneficial side effects. And so we're really good at using story. and just being aware of how ubiquitous and how deeply ingrained narrative structure is, you can start to see where other people's narratives have gotten into you.
Mm-hmm.
And you can decide, once you're aware of it, you can be more discerning. And
Yeah.
then what's really interesting is once you're sort of in control, or at least aware of the narratives that are coming your way and that you use, you can tweak them, you can disrupt them in small ways that are really interesting. So you can take a narrative that would normally get you really pissed off or agitated, and you can tweak it. You can disrupt it in a way that it makes you laugh as opposed to angry. It's just this incredibly powerful insight about how narrative works. And you can turn it into a practice that you disrupt your own narratives so that you can reassess what narratives matter. And we, and especially in our culture, this skill has been, we've pretty much offloaded it to corporations, and we've offloaded it to businesses. They tell us what makes us happy. They tell us what we need. They tell us why we're unhappy. They tell us all these stories, and we end up accepting them and forgetting to question them.
Yeah,
so narrative awareness and disruption is just a really great way to start new narratives. I think it's part of the future.
Yeah, it's like these companies have they understand on a deep level, especially like when you talk about the tech companies and stuff with Instagram and the social networks. Sure. They know exactly, they're talking to our limbic system, right? Like that's like they're talking to this fight or flight, to these really deep ingrained systems that are like that I'm not even conscious of.
Well, they have teams of engineers and and designers and artists, and they have access to resources and things like the asymmetry of our capacity to like to navigate those things is it's hard.
It's crazy, and that's just like that's a really actual like for me it's an example where I'm like, oh, I can see instantly like that my life has gotten better once I realized that was a narrative that they were telling me, like that this narrative of like you need to be connected, and then wait till that right moment I'm primed, like show me enough of stuff that I like, show me all the things I like that I'm into, and
Sure.
then wait, give me enough of that, and then all of a sudden now comes the Nike Air Jordans that you want to buy, and then that's
so you're kind of you're what you're saying is, I see you, algorithm. I see you.
Yeah.
I feel you working. That's
Yeah.
great. Thank you to them for teaching us how to be aware of that. It ain't gonna, you can take advantage of us for a while, but we're not going to put up with that forever. And we're already starting to reject that. And we could get into all kinds of conversations about how, artificial intelligence and machine learning is going to, interface with this process, but which I think is really interesting and hopeful. But yeah, I think that's what you're saying there. You're saying, wait a minute. All right, you can fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me.
Right. Yeah, but that's a tricky one. I catch myself all the time. But now it's just like when you're meditating and you catch yourself in the train of thought. It's the same thing. It's like, just stop. Okay, put it down. Or like my wife and I, we catch each other now. Like we're like on our way. Like, put your phone down. Yeah. Okay, I put it down. And don't take it personal when your wife or when she tells you to put it down, because But that's one narrative. Like, what's another narrative? Like, another narrative would be, God, like you said, like any of the corporations out there, whatever Coca-Cola is selling you, right? They're selling you health and happiness, right? And they're giving you like sugar syrup. That's a good one. That's like the total opposite, like giving you diabetes, but you just see all these sexy people on the beach, Yeah,
I think I'm less interested in sort of categorizing the narratives and more just forming new ones.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah.
And this speaks kind of to the fake it till you make it thing. Like, I have this other practice that I call I call it radical affection, which is this thing where I conjure up the feeling of affection. Like which is an easy thing to do because there are things that I feel affection for, pets and nephews and stuff like that. I can feel affection for. And then I project that affection out onto the world. and see if there's any response. And there is one. This is the fake it part. Like I feel something coming from that tree. Like there's whatever I push out to that tree, I feel reflected back at me. The point is that is the forming of a new narrative. Like that is the establishment of a new rapport, of a new relationship with nature. And when you do that with nature, you're in good hands, right? Because nature is not the thing. Sure, it could kill you. Sure, it could create, if you mistreat it long enough, or if you ignore it, if you don't, participate with it long enough, it's going to extinguish you. But if you get into a different kind of relationship, in other words, if you establish a new narrative about your relationship with it, then the floodgates open up for all the benefits that come with that. In other words, nature's a pretty powerful force. You can't deny that, because it's created everything that is, and if you can find a way to go into alliance with that force, as opposed to feeling separate from it and in a fight with it, or that you have to dominate or conquer it, if you can actually form an alliance with it, you've suddenly empowered yourself, in a, as far as we know, infinite way. So I guess all I'm saying is that I'm telling a story here. I've been telling myself this story for a long time, and I get a lot out of it. It carries me through hardship, and there's a lot of ancillary benefits to narratives, as well as we don't have to be victims of them. We can actually be the authors of them, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, to open up the floodgates.
Yeah,
that's cool.
So yeah, and that really is where I think we have an untapped opportunity, and that is when we invite artists to discover this thing they already know. It's about reintroducing them to. Here's the thing I realized about about artists, is that they're very sensitive. They're very aware. They may be, in fact, generally speaking, they are very ego driven and very egoic, and at present believe that their talent and their genius is theirs alone. It feels like it comes from them, but it actually comes from a relationship with the world. It's actually generated in relationship to the world. And I think reintroducing artists to that, getting them to take that seriously and to feel that, they'll start to create art that in some way that's unique to them. It will be embedded in their art. And I'm still naive enough to think that artists create culture. And so if we can get enough artists to embed that intelligence in their work, then their work will carry that intelligence into culture, and our culture will slowly realign itself with nature. And then we won't be in this rivalrous game that we're in with it right now. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I can see how the ego can get in the way of that. Like the ego seems, I've had my bouts with ego and understanding it in my own world and trying to figure out where does it benefit me? Where does it get in my way? And maybe it's taking a step back from ego there and creativity and letting those floodgates kind of, go, or of opening those floodgates in the creativity way, and just saying, maybe I'm just like you kind of said at the beginning when we first got it, I don't even know if we were recording, but you kind of said like, I just kind of let that, it's not really mine. Like I don't really have to own it. I just kind of am communicating it, like
participate with it.
Yeah, and then I'm in a sense I'm participating, so I'm coming through no matter what at some point. So you can just kind of let go of the ego and just be sure that no matter what you do, because you got your finger in that, you're dipping your finger in there anyway.
You're in it. It's in you.
Right.
Well, it's the difference between ego inflation, which is easily popped and deflated, and ego expansion, which actually brings in the world. It's not, in other words, it creates resilience and expansiveness of ego. Simple kind of thought. It's a simple thought experiment to just sort of let your ego, and this is about softening boundaries, about making boundaries more and more permeable to the world, letting it in discerning ways such that your ego expands to be more and more inclusive, as opposed to the current situation.
Yeah. You have to have a certain amount of trust, but I guess doing it in discerning ways, it sounds like a good thing, right? You can't just let it all in, right? You have to understand, maybe do it a little tactically. For me, it's like I do it when I go to jiu-jitsu, it's a sport, and I think to myself, like, okay, the jiu-jitsu guys ahead of me, like, did I do good jiu-jitsu today? It's not about did I beat this guy or did I do this better than that guy? It's not about me. It's just like, did I practice good jiu-jitsu? And then to bring it back to what you're talking about, it's like, am I being a good Earthling? It's like, it's like, am I kind of giving reverence to the 7 million years of what's the word? Evolution. Thank you.
Just creativity.
And being grateful to that, about just the really the miracle that we are. It sounds it's so funny because when you say it, it's like yeah miracle, but
it's a scientific miracle. It makes it even funnier.
It really a science, and it's and the odds of it. If you really look, you look around. I don't see it. I don't see this happening in, like, as far as we can look, as far as we can see. We're the only ones out there at the moment, as far as with what we can see, and that's a whole nother topic. But it's like this isn't like something that happens every day here. This little blip of time where these humanoids switched off and went this crazy route where we're self-aware. It's a weird thing. It really is to think to know that to just know that, to be able to ask these questions that you basically probably maybe you never can answer. Like, what use is that? What is that? What does it bring us? But
it brings us joy in the moment.
It does, right? If you're in the moment, it's there.
Yeah, I think it brings me a continual joy, continual hope, continual reason to get up in the morning, because it's beautiful. My God, it's, and I don't mean to sound constantly like that, but what's the alternative? I have a saying, the future is beautiful, or there isn't one. So what are you going to choose? I think this is where I think this is where the hope is. I think this is the great attractor is it's in this new kind of beauty that we're just beginning to catch glimpses of, a new category of beauty that is not just visual, it's actually visceral. I think that this is what paradigm shift feels like. When you start talking like that there's this new kind of beauty that I'm starting to see, and it's not just visual, it's visceral. That's the language of a paradigm shift happening. Not just in me, but like I see it in the world. I see all this chaos and all this craziness. And then I see little glimpses of how it all makes sense. That is really exciting and really cool. And it could all come to a crashing halt. And, this whole thing just sort of comes to a sputtering end. Thanks a lot, humans. But
yeah, that's true.
It's awesome. It's awesome. And fun and worth participating in,
Right. Yeah, that's a good point to make too. That it could just be over. That volcano could erupt. At any moment. So just but as long as we're here, being in the moment.
Dude, the volcano is erupting. It is. It may not be spewing lava and ash, but there's a different volcano. Which is, it actually is spewing ash. and carbon dioxide. There is a volcano happening on the planet right now. It's carbon emissions, which is a man-made volcano happening.
Right.
So yeah.
Yeah. Nice talking with you. Thanks for sharing. I think we found a good spot there, huh? What do you think?
All right.
Yeah.
I think
Tell me about your surfboard in the back there. So it's not a surfboard you said at the beginning. It's actually
I call it a wall hanger.
It's a wall hanger, but
it's one of my shapes. I had a previous career. I actually did make, a pretty good mark on the surfing world, but it's one of my designs that I used to make surfboards, real ones, and I've just turned it into a wall hanger art. It tells the story of this tree that had to be cut down. And the one right behind me is a cedar tree that the place that I was doing this work, they were cutting it down. So I took it and then I processed the wood into the middle one, which is a really nice sort of finely finished piece. And then the last one there is these old cedar shingles that were on an old barn that was out on the beach. So it kind of tells the history of that tree and that kind of wood here in New England.
Oh, you're in New England. Nice.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. So you used to make surfboards. That's cool. Wow.
Yeah. I still sell the designs. So it's a lot easier to sell a design than to actually build a board. They're hard because they're made out of wood. They're hollow and yeah.
Yeah, because the real process of making, like, not the real process, what's weird. That's the original. Originally surfboards were made out of wood, but now these newer ones, it's a very, very like
it's just
chemical.
foam.
It's like a super. It's actually very dangerous, right? You see the guys always wearing masks on, and it's like they're breathing in all this crap all day long, and
yeah. This was kind of like a retro thing back in the mid 2000s where we started a new trend to build your own board, homegrown boards we called them. It was good. It was a good run.
Cool. Well, I will obviously share everything that you've got going on in the show notes and stuff like that. If you want, you plug your website or plug anything else you want to talk about at the moment.
Well, it's oika.com. I'm particularly interested in working with artists who feel a sense of underappreciated communion, like with nature. If there are any artists out there who draw inspiration from nature and want to understand that more and perhaps put that to use in our time, as a way of cultivating healing, I'm interested in hearing from artists. I just heard from a group in Europe this morning, and they just sent me some of their work, and it's just beautiful stuff. And I'm really excited about finding new artists who want to develop what I call ecological intelligence and create art that then communicates that intelligence to culture, so that we might, ease our ride here.
Sounds good. It was really nice, man. I appreciate that story that you told about us, this from the 7 million years, and that it gave me a little bit of perspective. It's always good to hear that again. It
goes all the way back to the beginning of the universe. That same story doesn't just start 7 million years ago. It actually is a 13.8 billion year story that starts on the Big Bang. Yeah. And you can actually see ecological intelligence in the light of the early universe, and then that ecological intelligence builds on itself to this moment right here. So it's
you tapped into it somehow, man.
What's that?
You tapped into it somehow. You got it in you, and you bringing it out, like when you talk.
Well, we all do. I just happen to have interrogated science to tell me that story.
Right.
In the whole story, as far as we know. That's not to say that we know everything or that there's not still mystery. There's mystery everywhere. But the point is, if you interrogate science and you string it all together into a narrative, okay, it tells us who we are. It tells us where we are and how we got here. And it also provides this a source of meaning and understanding that has all these consequences to solve the perennial problems of our time. That's the argument. That's the output of a life's work. And if anybody wants to explore that. Check out oika.com, oika.com, and join the ride.
All right, man. That's good for today.
Great talking to you, Remington.
Yeah. Nice to talk with you. Nice to meet you, man.
You too, brother.
All right. Take it easy. Huh?
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Yeah, bye.